Hey, what's good? This video will be an homage to the great career of Sergio Martinez, who was really never meant to reach the heights that he reached during his boxing career. Also, this is a sort of a narrative of what happens when you're ducked by everyone, when everyone's scared, shook by the mere mention of you, or they just laugh your name off, like a Gennady Golovkin. And yeah, it's a tale of a fighter that nobody with a big name wanted to fight until, as you could see here, Miguel Cotto fought him until he had like multiple surgeries on his knee, and he was 39 years old. He's 40 now. But it's an homage and a cautionary tale, you could say. So let's get it started. Sergio Martinez started boxing. I think he put on his first pair of gloves at 20 years old. How was he able to do this? Well, he was an athlete. He was a cyclist, a runner. I think he does swimming and all that kind of stuff. So he was always very athletic. So I don't know what the story is behind him picking up a pair of gloves, deciding to box, because boxing is a very tough sport, and props to him. He started boxing professionally at the age of 22. So, and he didn't get a title shot until the age of 35 against Kelly Pavlik. And as we know, he made the most of it. He beat Kelly Pavlik's ass. Of course, he got dropped in that fight, but he bloodied him up. Ooh, you know the monster that Kelly Pavlik was at the time. Hopkins kind of destroyed it a little bit, but Sergio Martinez demolished the monster that was Kelly Pavlik, made him an alcoholic afterwards. But yeah, he was already 35. He spent most of his career in Argentina and Spain, and by the time he finally got his big fight in the United States, it was about 2008. He was 33. Nobody had heard of him. So nobody had heard of him by 2008 when he made his US debut. And by 2010, he became Fighter of the Year in Ring Magazine's ranking, right? In 2010, he was number 3 pound for pound, only behind Floyd Mayweather and, of course, Manny Pacquiao. He had already probably exceeded his own expectations and the expectations of anybody else that had followed his career. But he had the title, of course, of the most avoided fighter. And that is a reason why he moved up to middleweight, because he would not get big fights at 154 against the likes of a Miguel Cotto, a Mayweather, or Manny Pacquiao. So, and that fight he had with Citron was pure garbage. He knocked him out. But Citron insisted enough that it was a headbutt and not Sergio's left hand, just because he throws it so awkward that he thought it was a headbutt. The referee was convinced and just let the fight go on. So he pretty much allowed Citron like 5 minutes to recuperate from that knockout. To recover from that knockout, and they robbed Sergio Martinez after that. And after that, he got the fight with Paul Williams, both of these guys were the most avoided fighters in boxing. He moved up to middleweight to fight. He lost the majority decision in a very close fight. I thought Sergio pulled it off, but what's funny is that Kelly Pavlik was supposed to fight Paul Williams multiple times, but I think both these guys pulled out. I remember Kelly Pavlik had a staph infection, and somehow, some way, Sergio Martinez got the shot. Sergio Martinez got that shot at the title. They didn't want him to have that shot, but he got it, baby. He got it. So he got it, became middleweight champion of the world. Kelly Pavlik was, I believe he was on most pound for pound lists, and Sergio just demolished him. So he then demolished Kelly Pavlik. He got that rematch with Paul Williams, and he got one of the greatest knockouts I think in boxing history, man, that overhand left was just crazy. Just landed, boom, smack on Paul Williams' chin. He felt timber. You know, great victory. And this is where he put on the crown, started yelling, Viva Argentina, all this stuff. And this is where people are like, we got ourselves a new star. We got ourselves a new star for boxing. You know, he's Latin, he's good looking, he's entertaining. He got a very entertaining style. But as we know, boxing isn't always that simple. Boxing politics kind of ruins careers. So he was supposed to fight Sebastian Spick, but he didn't want to fight that fool. He wanted to fight Sergey Zinzurek, who was undefeated, 37-0 at the time. Instead of fighting this guy who was like 30-0 and 10 knockouts, he decided to fight Zinzurek, who had a great amateur career and was undefeated. Oh, he destroyed him, dude. I think he dropped him like 5 times, and Zinzurek had never been dropped before. So, who had his WBC title? Who had his WBC title was now Cesar Chavez, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. who beat Sebastian Spix, who Sergio Martinez didn't want to fight. So who were the champions at the time? The WBA champion after 2011 was Felix Sturm. IBF was Sebastian Sylvester, who then lost it to Daniel Gill at the start of 2011. And WBO was Demetrius Pirong. Remember that guy, little Russian dude that KO'd Danny Jacobs? And the WBC champion was, of course, Sergio Martinez, who they later stripped him of that title. And what's interesting about that is that none of these guys fought Sergio Martinez. So he couldn't get big fights with Mayweather, Cotto, or Pacquiao, or Chavez Jr. for that matter at the time. And none of these guys ever called him out. I don't remember anyone calling out Sergio Martinez out at that time. If you remember anyone calling that fool out, comment below who called him out. Of these 3 other guys, I know Chavez Jr. ducked him for a while. The 2011, I think he pulled out of a fight with Chavez with Sergio Martinez. He pulled out of a fight. And that was when Sergio Martinez was just pissed, man. He couldn't get the big fights. So he fought a Zinzurek, he fought a Barker. And taking on these bigger guys was just taking a toll on his body. I remember he had trouble with the Darren Barker. He had minimal trouble with Zinzurek. So his quest back to winning that WBC title, he wanted Chavez so bad. He knew he was the real champion of that WBC. He was the real owner of that title. But you know what he did? Instead of sitting out like a bunch of these clowns do today, like Amir Khan or Demetrius Andrade, and not fight anybody, he took on the best competition available, which was some good competition. Undefeated Darren Barker, undefeated Sergey Zinzurek, tough as nails Matthew Macklin, who dropped him and who was winning that fight. He's done what a lot of these guys don't do nowadays. They take on these young challengers, these tough guys looking for that biggest victory. Like he was. He understood that he was that man when he fought Kelly Paddock, so he gave these other guys chances. But taking on these young lions was taking a toll. And meanwhile, this whole time, he was calling out Cotto. He was calling out Mayweather. He was calling out Manny Pacquiao. He's like, I'll beat all those guys by knockout. I beat all of them. I want to fight all of them. And the funny thing is that those guys probably would have beaten him then. But since he was so talented, so dangerous, then so avoided, none of these guys wanted even a piece of him. So he fought Matthew Macklin. Didn't look that great. He got dropped around 7th round. And he came back. He was losing on my card. I think on most cards he was losing. He came back to knock him out. I'm very, very excited. He was a very great champion, Sergio Martinez. So finally, Chavez Jr. grew the balls to get into the ring, man. Finally, right? He got a career payday. He's like, man, I'm gonna beat this fool up, knock him out, and the Chavez Jr. fight turned out to be a career ender, man. I still say to this day that that's the fight that has ended his career. That's the fight that has taken the biggest toll off his career. So he dominated 11 rounds. As we all know, Chavez Jr. was like 20 pounds heavier than Sergio Martinez on fight night. As Chavez Jr. does gain like 30 pounds, some crazy stuff like that. But he dominated, looked beautiful, beautiful performance, man, beautiful. But that 12th round, Chavez came on strong, knocked him down. Sergio Martinez, the warrior that he is, got up, started slugging it out with Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. could not finish the job, but Chavez lost the fight. But Martinez, I think he got broken arm or broken knee. He got a lot of damage from that fight, and he had to take almost a year off. He should have taken a lot longer. So that was something on his part. Chavez got suspended, so he couldn't do the rematch. And he should have taken a lot longer because knee surgery is no joke. Anyone that has surgery knows that it's no joke. Or anyone that has had a broken bone knows that it's tough to come back from. It's tough, and it takes a long time to heal. And even after it heals, it just does not feel the same. So he came back, fought a Martin Murray, who's undefeated, 25-0 in his native Argentina. And many people believe that he lost that fight. He fought a tough guy. As we know from that Triple G fight, we know how tough Martin Murray is. We already know that. And this guy beat him. He beat the best challenger that was in front of him. So all these years since he became a superstar, you could say, from knocking out Paul Williams the day he was, the opponents were Zinzurich, Darren Barker, Matthew Macklin, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and Martin Murray. Of those opponents, only Chavez Jr. could be say was a star-making fight. And it was, because he dominated him. He dominated that fight and looked very good. But of the champions that were champions at the time, at the end of 2010, none of them fought him. So he never had the chance to unify the titles, become a unified champion. None of those guys fought him, but he was recognized as the lineal champion of the middleweight division for beating Kelly Pavlik. So I think after all this time, all these tough fights, getting dropped multiple times, dropped by Macklin, dropped by Chavez, and dropped by Murray, that's 3 fights. That's 3 knockdowns in 3 fights. I think Freddie Roach saw some slippage, especially in that Chavez fight, since he was in the corner. I think Chavez could have beat him had he pressured earlier, but he didn't. Freddie Roach saw it. He's like, hey, Miguel, this guy's not as dangerous as he once was. He wasted his prime, you could say. I'm speaking for Freddie Roach, hypothetically, right? Hey, Miguel, this guy wasted his prime fighting Darren Barker, Zinzurich, Chavez, Macklin. I think now he's prime picking. He's had 2 knee surgeries. He's been off for over a year. Let's do it. So, and last June, we all saw what happened. He got picked apart. He had no legs under him. And not to take anything away from Miguel Cotto, someone had to push Martinez off the edge, and Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather didn't want to do it. Imagine Sergio Martinez trying to chase Mayweather around with that hurt knee, man. Imagine Mayweather had done what Cotto did to Martinez. Oh man, you would not. Just the comments from his fans be like TBE all day. Imagine he fought Martinez instead of Maidana. That's what would have happened. I believe that's what would have happened. The same exact result. Maybe not as brutal beating, but he would have taken a toll too as well, and he would have won. So nobody wanted to fight him until he was past his prime, and that's what happens when a fighter is avoided during his prime. When he looks just so good, when he just looks so talented, he just establishes himself as such a talented fighter, such a strong fighter. He was number 3 pound for pound for a very long time. He kept slipping a notch because of his performance, but still nobody with a big name, not even his fellow champions, would step up. And now, during the time that he was champion, you could say he was ducking people because he was now the one avoiding fighters, now looking for the biggest paycheck. Golovkin, WBA, IBF, Sam Sullivan, WBO, Peter Quillen. He didn't call out those guys. He called out Miguel Cotto, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. So from 2011 to 2014, he became the most avoided to the most sought after. So now what's left? What's left for him to prove? Nothing. He's had a great career. He was never even meant really to be a boxer, but he's become one of the best fighters in the last 5 years to put on a pair of gloves, man. Nothing. He has nothing to be ashamed of. He lost to a very good fighter in Miguel Cotto, and he's just past his prime. He was past his prime. He got the biggest fights past his prime already. So, in homage, this was an homage and a cautionary tale. So, he's had a very good career, but it would have been better if these guys hadn't ducked him once he won and once he beat the Paul Williams the way he did. So, like Gennady Golovkin, he was a circumstance of his success. He just destroyed Kelly Pavlik and Paul Williams so convincingly that none of these guys would step up. Not even when he said he would go down to 150 to fight him. Not even then. It wasn't until they saw clear signs of decline that Miguel Cotto stepped up. So, yeah, everybody, thanks for watching. If you're still watching, this is kind of a long video, but I just wanted to pay homage to a great fighter. And if he decides to retire, he's had a great career, better than expected. I think anybody expected. All right, everybody, comment your thoughts below. What do you think about Sergio Martinez and his circumstance? All right, comment, rate, subscribe. Peace.